Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today on this webinar on overcoming the top three zero trust challenges. I'm Narendran Vaidishwaran, Director of Product Marketing for Data Protection and Zero Trust here at CrowdStrike. I have over 17 years of experience in cybersecurity, and I have been on several zero trust guidance initiatives since 2017. In this webinar, I'll focus on the three zero trust challenges that organizations face, irrespective of where they are in their zero trust journey. I will also highlight the key considerations and recommendations to address these challenges in implementing a successful zero trust initiative. So, why is zero trust important now? So, most organizations like yours have several layered defense strategies implemented over the years. You may have focused on the north-south traffic or the east-west traffic, and over the years, you may have implemented several different tools like firewalls, the antivirus tools, the EDR, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention tools, the privilege access control, MFA, just to name a few. So all these worked really, really well from within a well-defined perimeters. Well, we are in a perimeterless setup today, and this has further increased the security challenges, as you may agree. And not to mention the complexity and cost, which are just increasing with the several tools and the integrations on the several requirements from an ROI perspective. So adding to the woes, today's workforce is also remote or hybrid, and your users are accessing applications from several different endpoints, from several different locations. Also, every day in the news, we come across new attack techniques and tactics. So you know how the adversaries have evolved and are constantly evolving and trying to gain access to your enterprise, moving laterally, virtually undetected, and accessing your sensitive data, either exfiltrating or encrypting for ransomware purposes. This is in addition to the nation-state actors that are constantly improving their game as well, and also moving laterally, trying to get to your data. So in this high-level view of the MITRE ATT&CK TTPs, as you can see, the adversaries do not move in a linear and predictable manner. An effective zero-trust strategy can actually lessen the headache of playing catch-up with these evolving adversarial tactics. But thanks to the efforts of the analyst community, technology leaders, and practitioners, Zero Trust has gained a lot of traction. At least that's what we are witnessing in our interaction with several organizations across verticals. We are now coming across organizations that understand what Zero Trust is not. That is, they understand it is not a do-it-all security tool, which is the most important thing to understand right from the beginning. They also understand that they may not have to necessarily rip and replace the existing security investments that they have made over the years. Like I mentioned, all the tools for the north-south and east-west traffic and the existing investments. And they also understand that they may not need to completely re-architect the network. So it's good to see that most organizations understand that it is a security strategy with the assumption that the adversary is already inside, and that trust is never to be granted implicitly. And so the question is, when the subject tries to access the enterprise resource, should you give access or not? And how do you do that? Combining all the specifics of presuming the breach and continuously validating the accesses. I believe organizations like yours have a good grip on what Zero Trust means. But there are three key challenges when you try to implement and operationalize Zero Trust. The first is security coverage. So that's a given. Most organizations have been there for several years, maybe moving to clouds, the digital transformation, as you may call, right? So, but the thing is, they still have several legacy endpoints on which they may not be able to install the endpoint security tools or agents or sensors. Or these could be unmanaged endpoints from their contractor or vendor ecosystem who will be accessing their on-premises and cloud applications. Also, it could be the identity store sprawl with millions of authentication requests and across on-prem and hybrid identity stores. So how do you determine which of these are genuine and which of these access requests should be challenged with the identity verification or conditional access? So that's a challenging proposition. And with so many tools already in place, there is more than a single version of the truth impacting the effective visibility and threat hunting for the SOC teams. Most adversaries are after sensitive data, and I would say almost all of the adversaries are after your sensitive data, right? Because that's the gold mine for most of these hackers. And it's important to get visibility to know where the data is moving to and from where. And also, it's important to determine how long the data should be retained for compliance and forensic reasons. So all these put together kind of add to the security coverage nightmare. The second most important challenge is that we come across several organizations wanting to implement zero trust in a much faster manner. They don't want to spend years, months or years on just going ahead with the complete implementation of zero trust. So, and also organizations are generally undecided on the zero trust framework that best works for them. They could consider NIST 80207, the CISA framework, or the ZTX frameworks. Right? Again, how much of re-architecture should one do given the limited budget and the pressures to deliver the zero trust projects on time? And the other important question is how to utilize the existing multi-vendor tools with effective integrations and how to optimize the ROI with these tools. And while doing so, the third challenge is to kind of optimize the user experience, right? When we talk about user experience, it's not just from an end user perspective, it's also from the IT and the security operations perspective. So the end user might be challenged with multiple multi-factor authentication requests, which may add to the fatigue, and the end user could kind of end up doing shadow IT operations, like probably evading the multi-factor authentication requirements, storing the files, sensitive data onto personal Google Drives and things like that. And there could also be situations where the security teams have a really, really bad user experience with the inability to connect the dots, like with the disjointed context. And they'll be leading with several false positives, which eventually will not lead to a good mean time to detect and respond. So these are critical items for the security teams. So all in all, user experience should also be optimized, and that's also a critical challenge with many zero trust implementation. So how do we get there? We will have to have the broadest security coverage, fast time to value, and the most frictionless user experience, ideally. And to achieve that, organizations should choose the platform that kind of suits their needs and now and for the future, and has to be scalable for sure. And the platform that has the foundational elements of zero trust covered, like providing security for the endpoints, identities, data, cloud workloads, on-prem workloads, etc. That's going to be a great starting point in solving most of the challenges. So to address these top three challenges, we should consider a few other critical items as well. One is that is when you narrow down on a platform and your zero trust strategy, you should focus on these critical elements as well. One is behavioral data. So it is crucial to understand what the users are up to, right? An adversary can take over a legitimate credential and try to do things that the user isn't supposed to do. For example, if you see service accounts doing interactive logins on domain controllers using RDP, it's just the tip of the iceberg. There could be several other attempts, and with the millions of authentication requests, it'll be really, really difficult to narrow down on the specific security incident without having good behavioral analytics powered by AI, right? And we also need to limit the blast radius with segmentation. So over the years with zero trust, many organizations have implemented micro segmentation and network segmentation. And there is also this identity segmentation, which would eventually uh, prevent the users or the user groups to have access to critical environments like the card data environment. So this segmentation eventually limits the or reduces the attack surface. And it's really, really important to prevent modern attacks such as ransomware and supply chain threats. And because this is going to contain the lateral movement activity of the adversary. We also need to strategize on the context when it comes to security. So the more context we provide to the security teams, the faster that they are going to detect a security incident and respond to it in real time or in near real time. So we have to leverage as much data as possible from the users, the devices, the data flows, the origin of the data, the destination, who is accessing what and from where, and which cloud workloads are being used, and what are their vulnerabilities, and if the containers are having any misconfigurations, and so on and so forth. And eventually, we have to implement effective automation and orchestration to enable real-time responses. More data and context add to better accuracy or improved fidelity, and improves the mean time to detect and respond to threats. And the last is continuous verification. So the continuous verification is a critical piece because it's easier said than done, and it's also important to understand how to kind of continuously verify in real time based on the changing dynamics of the risk. So, for example, a user might be having a very low risk score, or the login or the access might be coming from a device with a very low risk score. But at the end of the day, if the behavior is changing and if it is crossing the baselines, and the system or the strategy should be in place to continuously detect this, assess the risk, and make sure that only the right subject is able to access the resource with all these controls in place. Most of the zero trust frameworks, including the widely adopted NIST 800-207 framework, emphasize on these critical elements, not in any particular order. So with these critical considerations, how do you plan the zero trust journey? How do you address the security challenge or the security coverage challenge, right? So if you have adoption and protection in the X and Y axis of this graph, organizations will ideally want to be on the top right corner with, of course, maximum protection and maximum adoption throughout the organizations with the tools and the technology that they already have invested in. So that is the critical item here. So essentially, we have to aim to visualize and understand the adversary attack paths in this case. So aim to visualize and understand the adversary attack paths. Assess where we are with this today. And with all those endpoints, identities, identity stores, workloads, and data, it is important to see like the adversary and unravel the entire attack path as it moves across these entities. So as mentioned earlier, the endpoints could be managed by the enterprise or unmanaged, that is from vendor, contractor, laptops, or even work from home employees using their own endpoints. So you need to continuously assess all these critical zero trust elements with attack path visibility, identifying unusual behavior that exceeds the behavior baselines, and tying them back to the context. And this should be a critical part of your zero trust implementation. Next is addressing the time to value challenge. So move to the zero trust framework that works for you. So I believe I mentioned this in a couple of slides before this. And it's important that you choose the framework that works for you. So map the present state and the practical future state, not the ideal one, but the practical future state. Assess how you're going to use the existing security tools and how you're going to maximize the effectiveness, and chart out a plan to consolidate the tools and the capabilities. There is no one universal tool to achieve zero trust. So that's, of course, an important given. But you can get close to your zero trust goals by identifying the integration gaps and getting them to work together. Most importantly, if you combine the telemetry from various multi-vendor tools with the native telemetry from the platform that you have chosen, that will go a long way in helping you assess risk continuously across all these zero trust elements. Finally, addressing the user experience challenge. Well, you have to optimize the user experience, not just for the end user, but also for the IT and the security teams as well. So you will benefit from zero trust if you are able to apply the policies automatically and accurately, that is based on security context and based on the threat intel from various entities like the endpoints, identities, etc. It is also important to optimize the user experience with the risk-based conditional access. That is, maybe not trigger the MFA every time a user tries to access a specific application, but to do it based on the behavior and the deviations that the user or the credential is doing to access the specific application. So harness the power of the cloud for deployment and scale up as you move up along the zero trust journey. Strategize to utilize the power of AI and automation to respond accurately to newer or evolving adversarial tactics. Unification is the name of the game with zero trust, but it's not purely the technology, right? It's also important to get the people, the processes in place, and it's an overall culture that is going to positively impact the overall zero trust implementation and strategies. It's going beyond just the technologies and the tools and the integrations. But in short, choose the platform, right? That is preferably choose the platform that is cloud-based, that is scalable, and that utilizes behavior and AI, and one that can consume telemetry and make real-time policy decisions. So this will also automate a lot of security policies and also make sure that kind of lessens the friction, not just for the end user, but also for the security teams. Harden the foundational elements, identify the low-hanging fruits, and start with the low-hanging fruits, like if you have more vulnerabilities that you need to address in the endpoints and identities, start with them first, and then move to the other entities that are critical to you. So, and finally, the integration is key to fixing the gaps, and it's important to make sure that is as frictionless as possible as well. So, finally, how do these come together? Well, if you consider the NIST 800-207 Zero Trust Framework, for example, with the policy decision point and policy enforcement points for the respective entities, if the subject wants to access the enterprise resource, the policy decision point in the cloud can decide and enforce the policies across these foundational elements. So the foundational elements are, of course, the endpoint, identities, the workloads, data, etc. So, and all these while the policy decision point is constantly being enriched with the telemetry, both natively from within the system and also by consuming the signals from the various integrations, the multi-vendor integrations in the partner ecosystem. So this will help in providing the right security context, the improved fidelity, and also automation and orchestration of all these security policies and controls when the subject accesses the enterprise resource. So with that, I would like to once again thank you for joining me today. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if you want to understand how CrowdStrike can help you advance your zero trust strategy. Thank you.